The first time the world noticed something had changed in him was not when the stock prices surged or when the media praised another ruthless acquisition, but when a man who had lived like a statue for 2 decades flinched at the warmth of a human hand. For 20 years, a billionaire CEO had built an empire without allowing a single woman to cross the invisible wall around his heart, and then one quiet morning, a new assistant stepped into his office and unknowingly set off a chain of events that would leave an entire company, and a broken man, forever transformed. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment to pause. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that even the most wounded hearts can heal, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. Adrian Blackwell was a name spoken with reverence and fear across the corporate world. At 48, he had amassed more wealth than most men could imagine, yet his life felt emptier than a locked room with no windows. He lived in a glass penthouse overlooking a city that glittered endlessly below him, but inside, everything was silent. His days were meticulously scheduled, his nights endlessly long. Success had come at a brutal cost, one he never spoke about and no one dared ask. Employees whispered stories about him, about how he never dated, never smiled, never attended social events unless absolutely necessary. Some said he was cold by choice. Others sensed there was something deeper, something broken beyond repair. 20 years earlier, Adrian had been a very different man. Back then, his hands had known warmth, his laughter had come easily, and his future had felt wide open. Then tragedy arrived with no warning, tearing through his life with such violence that it left him emotionally numb. The woman he loved, the only one who had ever truly seen him, was gone in a single, devastating moment. In the aftermath, Adrian made an unspoken vow to himself. Never again would he allow that kind of closeness, never again would he risk losing everything. He buried himself in work, built walls out of success and discipline, and trained himself to exist without touch, without tenderness. Years passed, then decades. His company grew into a global powerhouse, admired for its innovation and feared for its efficiency. Adrian remained untouchable in every sense of the word. He expected perfection, gave no second chances, and maintained a professional distance so absolute it felt inhuman. Assistants came and went, burned out by his intensity, unable to break through the chill that surrounded him. Then, one rainy Monday morning, a young woman named Clara Hayes walked into his office carrying nothing but a thin folder and a quiet resolve. Clara was 26, newly graduated, and painfully aware of the rumors surrounding her new boss. She had taken the job not because of the prestige, but because she needed it. Life had taught her resilience early, carving strength into her softness. She had lost people too, had known loneliness and grief, but unlike Adrian, she had chosen to remain open, even when it hurt. From the moment she stepped into that towering office, she sensed the weight of the silence there, the kind that pressed against her chest and made breathing feel deliberate. Adrian barely looked up when she introduced herself. To him, she was just another assistant, another name to forget. He gave her instructions in clipped tones, already expecting disappointment. Clara listened carefully, absorbed every detail, and went to work with quiet efficiency. She didn't try to impress him with forced enthusiasm or flattery. She simply did her job, and she did it well. Days turned into weeks, and something unusual happened. She stayed. What began to unsettle Adrian was not a grand gesture or a dramatic confrontation, but the small, human moments Clara carried into his carefully controlled world. She remembered his preferences without being told twice. She anticipated problems before they reached his desk. She brought order without intrusion, warmth without demand. And then there was her presence. She didn't shrink under his intensity or harden herself to survive it. She remained exactly who she was, calm, observant, and quietly kind. One late evening, after a grueling day that stretched into night, Adrian found himself struggling with a sudden wave of dizziness. Stress had been his companion for years, but this was different, sharper, more frightening. As he rose too quickly from his chair, the room tilted. For a brief, terrifying second, control slipped from his grasp. Instinctively, Clara stepped forward and steadied him, her hand resting on his arm. It was a simple act, almost invisible, but for Adrian, it was seismic. He froze, breath caught somewhere between memory and reality. The warmth of her touch sent a shock through his system, awakening something he had locked away for 20 years. Clara sensed his reaction immediately and withdrew, apologizing softly, unaware of the storm she had stirred. Adrian dismissed her early that night, his voice strained, his mind unraveling. Sleep did not come easily. Old memories resurfaced, carrying both pain and longing. He realized with a quiet dread that the walls he had built were no longer as impenetrable as he believed. Clara's touch had not been romantic or intimate, yet it had pierced him deeper than anything else in decades. It frightened him, not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. Feeling again meant risking again. In the days that followed, Adrian grew distant, colder than before. He avoided unnecessary interactions, burying himself even deeper in work. Clara noticed the change but did not take it personally. She sensed that something fragile had been disturbed and chose patience over confrontation. Instead of withdrawing, she responded with consistency, showing up every day with the same quiet professionalism and respect. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Adrian began to observe her more closely. He noticed how she treated everyone with dignity, from interns to executives. He saw the way she stayed late to help colleagues without being asked, how she carried her own grief with grace rather than bitterness. One evening, he found her sitting alone in the office long after hours, organizing files she didn't need to, simply because she knew it would make the next day easier for him. That was the moment something shifted. Adrian realized that Clara was not trying to fix him, impress him, or change him. She was simply being human in a world he had stripped of humanity. And for the first time in 20 years, he wondered if perhaps he had been wrong to live the way he had. As weeks passed, the rigid structure of his life began to soften at the edges. He allowed himself small changes, subtle at first. He stayed in the office kitchen while Clara made coffee instead of retreating to his office. He listened when she spoke about work challenges instead of cutting her off. He even laughed once, a brief, surprised sound that startled them both. Word began to spread through the company. People noticed the shift, the way Adrian's presence felt less suffocating, more grounded. Then came the day of the company's annual charity event, something Adrian had avoided for years, delegating his attendance to others. That year, for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he decided to go. Clara accompanied him, not as a date, but as support. The event was filled with lights, music, and conversations, all things Adrian usually despised. Yet, with Clara nearby, he found the noise less overwhelming. At one point, overwhelmed by memories and emotion, Adrian stepped outside for air. Clara followed at a respectful distance. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by city lights, he finally allowed himself to feel the weight he had carried alone for so long. Without words, without expectation, Clara stood beside him, offering presence rather than solutions. When he reached out, hesitantly, and rested his hand against hers, it was not desire that filled his chest, but relief. The realization that he was not broken beyond repair. From that night on, Adrian began the slow, difficult process of healing. He sought help, something he had once considered a weakness. He opened up about his past, his loss, his fear of loving again. Clara remained a steady presence, never pushing, never crossing boundaries, simply reminding him through her actions that connection did not have to end in devastation. Near the end of this story, if you're feeling even a fraction of what Adrian felt when he realized he was not alone anymore, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement keeps these stories alive and helps spread hope to countless others. As months turned into a year, Adrian's transformation became undeniable. He was still a powerful CEO, still driven and disciplined, but he was also kinder, more present, more alive. He credited no miracle, no grand revelation, only a simple truth. Healing often begins with a small, unexpected act of kindness. Clara never claimed credit, never sought recognition. She understood that some of the most profound changes happen quietly, without applause.